Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Namik, and today we're going to talk a bit about crypto, obviously, but in reality it's going to be a very pragmatic conversation about trade-offs that we can make, and in my opinion, what will be like inevitable conclusions down the road. And ultimately, like how MegaETH expands this design space. So we'll start with like the very basics, right? So there is this thing called like the blockchain trilemma. There are obviously, exceptions to the rule, but it's very difficult to scale blockchains, right? So you usually have to make a trade-off of one way or another. You'll have maybe, decentralized yet secure networks. These will be the ones that usually have like a high monetary premium. You can think of Bitcoin, stuff like Ethereum. Then you'll have, like blockchains which are focused on like security and scalability. So that's going to be low validator accounts, permission chains. You can think of like a JP Morgan chain, right? And then finally, you'll have, mostly blockchains which are focusing on decentralization as well as scalability, right? And then that's where like these novel consensus mechanisms start to show up. There's obviously, exceptions to rules. So the idea of sharding could hypothetically enable security, decentralization, as well as scalability. But it actually comes with its own set of trade-offs. So we're going to do a couple case studies on the different environments and the trade-offs that they've made. So there's Bitcoin, the OG. So obviously very decentralized, very secure, but it's not super scalable, right? And that's actually because it doesn't want to be scalable. Bitcoin is a proof of work with no native smart contracts. And its utility, which is ultimately store of value, right, is so far detached from the idea of like what we think of as a scalable network that it's abstracted away. The thesis for Bitcoin is just a hodl. When it was my first cycle, I was like, why do people, like Ethereum is so great, Bitcoin, blah, 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 blah. But over time, I kind of realized, we're actually all on the same team, and there really is no second best. So, shout out to Bitcoin. Then there's Ethereum, right? So Ethereum was the first proof of stake, first smart contract platform, and is widely recognized to be like the most decentralized and censorship-resistant POS chain. It's the largest liquidity and the largest developer moat. But, it has been prohibitively expensive. People can't really use, Ethereum mainnet, and it just doesn't really work for the vast majority of people. So it's a very relatable meme, at least for me. And then you have Solana, right? So Solana is really cool. It's currently the most performant layer 1 in the market with a couple thousand TPS. There's a lot of dApps that Solana enabled to exist, right? So the whole DePIN space, it's not just meme coins. But Solana still has to deal with things like consensus, right? So if it's a chain that's optimizing for performance, it still has things like that create bottlenecks around its performance as TPS, and it doesn't actually enable even more novel use cases. Furthermore, Solana is not the most decentralized of networks. That's actually part of the reason why it's able to perform at a greater level than, let's say, in Ethereum. There's very high hardware requirements for Solana validator nodes. So, all of this is basically like an Ethereum versus Solana battle, but, Justin Sun and Tron are winning the whole way. I'm pretty sure like Samsung wallet has like Tron natively, it's like a native network. So the guy's killing it. So, with all of this in mind, right, I think we have a couple beliefs. The first is that, like, the blockchain trilemma is real. And then the second is that when we're looking at, mass adoption, which is like the number one buzzword in crypto, the base layer will never be enough to sufficiently scale, right? So we're thinking millions of TPS. And in that scenario, like, what should we optimize for, right? And we believe we should optimize for the environment which is best suited for like money settlement. And that means, where would banks do $100 million transfers between one another? There's a reason BlackRock deployed their on-chain fund onto Ethereum, right? So yeah, we love Ethereum, it's TLDR. Okay, cool. So now Ethereum is cool, doesn't really work, at least in terms of the vast majority of use cases. What can we do about this? And that's where like layer 2 stuff come in. But let's just go back to first principle thinking for layer 2s, because clearly layer 2s right now aren't ideal either, right? So this is what we believe. The point of the layer 2 is supposed to solve the bottleneck of the layer 1, right? So it should be optimizing for scalability as opposed to decentralization. That's point one. The second point is that censorship resistance is a spectrum, and decentralization, or like at least full decentralization, is not the only way to achieve censorship resistance, right? And then finally, the beauty of the layer 2 is you only have to focus on a very few things: execution and merkleization. This is as opposed to the settlement layer, which has to deal with stuff like consensus, data availability, and a lot of these bottlenecks that kind of prevent this ultra, well actually mega high performance environment. Okay, so what do the current layer 2s look like? So I gave you guys my opinion on what the first principles are. What's actually happening? Well, I mean, it's pretty expensive to say the least, right? Base, I think yesterday or the day before, was more expensive than mainnet. So I still don't understand how that's even possible, but fee markets for you, right? So right now, layer 2s are more or less like focusing on decentralization, right? Put the vast majority of their work into stuff like fraud proofs, and they're prioritizing decentralization as opposed to scalability, right? And we believe that scalability, again, is that problem that needs to be solved for Ethereum to scale and for any base layer to truly scale. What's the outcome, right? Things are pretty expensive. Now, I'll be honest, this was pre-blobs, so it does help my case a bit, but it's still really expensive. And the actual performance in these chains is not super impressive, right? So if you put Ethereum plus all of these layer 2s combined, they still do a fraction of the performance and activity that Solana is able to do, right? And Dragonfly actually had a very good, honest analysis of like, what's the difference actual performance between these different environments. So this is where MegaETH comes, right? Contrary to what Adrian just said, I am here to talk about an ultra low latency, ultra high throughput environment built on Ethereum, right? So I have some pretty, I'm saying some crazy stuff, right? So sub 1 millisecond soft finality and 100,000 TPS, right? And this is a blatant fork of a different MegaETH poster, so just bear with me. What is it that MegaETH does to be able to kind of like unlock this design space, right? So, we've taken a very contrarian approach, right? How performant can we get an environment? So our edge, I guess, is we go really deep into embracing and leveraging the heterogeneity of layer 2 nodes, right? So we specialize in nodes. What we've done is we've built out a very beefy sequencer. It's a single centralized sequencer, right? With very high hardware cost. It's centralized, it's rotating, but it enables that ultra high throughput and more importantly, the ultra low latency, right? And then we have, so that's like centralized block production. But we have many watcher nodes that only do a subset of the tasks of the sequencer, which allows many nodes to scale in tandem with this very large and powerful sequencer, right? As a result, we're able to have lower hardware requirements for our watcher nodes than any existing implementation, including layer 1s or layer 2s. So that means like the costs of validating the network are extremely low. We do a lot of other optimizations, but that is for another day. I think this is like really the meat of what we're doing in a unique manner. Ways to kind of contextualize this, you can think of Ethereum nodes as like total anarchy, right? There's a swarm of these nodes running around doing transactions independently, while the MegaETH sequencer is more of a constitutional monarchy, right? It's very powerful, but it's always kept in check by the watcher nodes and the full nodes. So what is it that we're building? We think we're building the end game of Ethereum, to be completely frank with you, right? So back in 2021, Vitalik had this piece, aptly titled The End Game, where this is a quote. He said, "We get a chain with block production that is still centralized, but a block validation which is trustless and highly decentralized, and censorship, and then specialized anti-censorship magic preventing the block producers from censoring," right? So we built something somewhat similar. We have a very centralized block production of this beefy sequencer. We have decentralized block validation, where it's very cheap to check the validity, or fault proof. So these are extremely low hardware costs for these layer 2 full nodes, and it ends up being much cheaper than, again, the costs of validating the network are very, very affordable. What is it that this actually enables? This is what gets me really excited. Well, we're finally enabling like real-time crypto, which is like a very crazy statement. What does that look like? Well, we can build like a real-time prediction market, right? I love Polymarket. Maybe I just love to bet on things, but Polymarket is great. You can bet on the outcome of a basketball game, right? Or you can bet on the presidential election. That's like 80-90% of their volume right now. But you can't bet on like your favorite reality TV show and who's going to be kicked out this episode. You can't bet on things that are streaming. And that's the actual unlock for us. You can build native infrastructure for the internet in real time. Past that, you can actually build out like the long-awaited high-frequency trading products in DeFi. You can create sophisticated like high-frequency strategies, bring that to larger pools of capital, real-time streaming, payments, all of that, and then finally like consumer and social. Also can build an entire new set of infrastructure built for high-perf chains like MegaETH. So yeah, that's us. Pretty short, but to the point. If you're interested about what we're building, you come build the end game with us in real time. And yeah, that's our Twitter. That should be a QR code to our Twitter where we can chat more.